We have a soy problem in the United States. We seriously do. We look at the Japanese culture and they eat 3+ ounces of soy per day. And they have the longest life expectancy in the world. And it's not just their overall life expectancy. Like, their healthy life is better too. In the United States, on average, our healthy life is up to about age 66. In Japan, it's up to age 74. So they're functioning better at an older age, and they're consuming that much soy. What is the difference? I mean, we do need to get kind of granular here because, candidly, I've done videos bashing soy in the past, and I'm not a big fan of soy. There are components to it that we need to probably look at further, but when we look just sheerly metabolically, there's some interesting stuff. In the United States, we're not just consuming soy. We're consuming hydrogenated soybean oil in ridiculous amounts, and it's most of the time in foods that just are innocent that we're not thinking about. Well, I guess they're not innocent because they have that in it, but hydrogenated soybean oil is a different world. Plus, who knows the soy that we're consuming? We just don't know much about the whole GMO piece. We can pretend that we do because there's a few studies, but the reality is we don't really know with the whole genetically modified stuff. So in Japan, they're eating specific kinds of soy. They're eating things like miso. They're eating things like even tofu to a certain degree is better than like hydrogenated oil, right? And they're consuming things like natto, which contains nattokinase, which I'm going to talk about here in a second.
I went ahead and put a link down below for Thrive Market as well. This is a 30% off discount link. So this is 30% off your entire first grocery order. So if you're concerned about the kinds of chemicals and things like that that are on your food, well, that's where Thrive Market really shines because they vet every single product that comes on their shelves. So they turn down thousands of products because they will not have preservatives, they will not have hidden garbage in their food. Okay, so that link down below gets you 30% off literally your whole grocery order and gets you a free gift. So I recommend you check them out, peruse their aisles a little bit, see what you can get, and then it gets to your doorstep. Super awesome. I think you'll love it. So that link down below underneath this video.
Now, if you look at a huge study that was published in the journal Nutrients, it took a look at 6 studies with over 92,000 participants, so all epidemiological studies, and they classified the Japanese staple diet containing soy, containing fish, containing seaweed, containing miso, so another category of soy, pickles, green tea. Okay, they really categorized that as like the primary staples. And they found even based upon this, people that adhered to that style of diet more lived longer. So the more soy, the more fish, the more seaweed that they ate, the longer they seemed to live compared to those that weren't consuming those things. So what is it with the soy? What do we need to pay attention to? So first of all, the fermentation process changes things. Now, where it changes things, we don't know entirely, but there's benefits to the gut microbiome. Okay, and one of the common things that people point out is, okay, soy has estrogenic properties, phytoestrogens. Now, how that translates into the human body is pretty complex, but one of the pieces that we may have to look at with specific fermented soy. So for example, when you look at miso, you look at soy that's been fermented with something called koji. Okay, that is a bacteria that the Japanese culture uses a lot to ferment soy. Okay, things like miso, right, are going to contain that. Well, when it's fermented and you have that bacterial component, you support the microbiome, and that has something called the estrobolome, which I've done specific videos on the estrobolome. That is a component of the microbiome that actually helps metabolize estrogens into the proper estrogens, not the 1,6-hydroxyestrogens and the bad estrogens. So a certain degree of estrogen is actually good in men and women. It's the more toxic, for lack of a better term, 1,6-hydroxyestradiol that's bad. And if you have a good, healthy microbiome, you can actually deal with that. So I think that is the most flagrant difference. The kind of soy they're consuming is a different category altogether. It just is. And they're consuming a fair bit of it. Now, miso soup in general, right? You've got broth, you've got good amounts of sodium, you've got the fermentation process, you've got seaweed a lot of times in it, and the seaweed has other components to it too. So they consume so much in the way of seaweed with the fucoxanthin, which has huge microbiome effects and potentially positive effects when it comes down to insulin modulation. You know, we don't always want to go to a Japanese place and eat miso soup. So the other thing is Japanese culture has an extremely low level of dementia. So when you look at a study published in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry, it breaks it down that, okay, natto and nattokinase, a component of natto, which is fermented soy, may actually help clear out beta amyloid plaque. Beta amyloid plaque is a large contributor to Alzheimer's and dementia. This doesn't mean that eating fermented soy is magically going to clear this up. There's obviously a bunch of other factors we have to look at with the Japanese culture. High fiber, super active. So these all play a role, right? But this might be something that's adding into the mix a bit more. Now, when we cut over to like the United States, we're making some leaps and bounds in that world too with like lower carb protocols. Because what happens is when you form ketones, like in a very low carb diet, ketones are an additional fuel for the brain. So when the brain is having difficulty with network stability and just the energetics of the brain in general, you potentially can help that out by having an additional fuel source coming from ketones. So what I'm kind of alluding to here is maybe like mental health related, maybe having some miso or some natto alongside a more ketogenic protocol. Maybe that's a really good thing to be focusing on. So the bottom line is, it all is in the details. We always say the devil's in the details. You know, if you're consuming a bunch of soy that is total garbage and a bunch of hydrogenated soybean oil or just rancid soybean oil to begin with, yeah, you've got a problem. High levels of omega-6, that's a different world than a fermented good quality soy. So it's always in the details. I'll see you tomorrow.